The night was quiet. Too quiet. In the small desert town of Red Mesa, most people were asleep. A cold wind moved across the empty roads. Street lights flickered. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Then the sky flashed. Not like lightning. It was brighter. Slower. Almost like something burning while falling. At 3:17 a.m., a deep sound rolled across the sky. It was not thunder. It was longer, heavier, like metal dragging across the air. Inside a small government observatory, Dr. Alan Reeves sat alone with a cup of cold coffee. He was watching space. Most nights were boring. Just dots of light and numbers on a screen. But tonight, something was wrong. A red line suddenly appeared on his monitor. Alan frowned. That's strange. The computer started making a quiet beeping sound. He leaned closer. The object was moving fast. Very fast. Too fast. He typed commands quickly. Coordinates appeared. Velocity numbers jumped higher and higher. Then the computer showed a prediction line. Alan's heart froze. The object wasn't passing Earth. It was coming directly toward it. No, that can't be right. He recalculated. The result was the same. The object was massive. Bigger than anything they had tracked before. His hands started shaking. He checked the impact timer. The screen slowly printed the numbers. 23 hours, 58 minutes, and 41 seconds. Alan whispered to himself. 24 hours. Just then, the observatory phone rang. It was NASA's emergency channel. A serious voice spoke. Dr. Reeves, we need you to confirm something. Alan swallowed. I already know what you're going to say. Silence filled the line. Then the voice spoke again. The object entered Earth's gravitational field 20 minutes ago. Alan stared at the blinking red dot. How big is it? He asked. The voice hesitated. Then came the answer. Big enough to end civilization. Alan leaned back in his chair. Outside, the sky flashed again. People in the town started waking up. Phones began buzzing with emergency alerts. TV stations turned on. News reporters looked confused. Across the world, telescopes turned toward the same point in space. Something huge was falling toward Earth. But that wasn't the worst part. 10 minutes later, scientists discovered something terrifying. The meteor was changing direction. Not naturally. Almost like it was steering itself. Alan stared at the screen again. A new signal appeared beside the meteor. A strange repeating pulse. It looked almost like a message. Alan whispered slowly. That's not a meteor. The power in the observatory suddenly shut off. The monitors went black. Outside, the sky turned an unnatural dark red. And somewhere high above Earth, something inside the meteor woke up. The power inside the observatory stayed dead. Dr. Alan Reeves sat in the darkness, staring at the blank monitors. Only the emergency lights glowed red across the room. Outside, people in Red Mesa were standing in the streets. Everyone was looking up. The sky had a strange color now. Not black. Not blue. A deep dark red, like something was burning very high above Earth. Alan grabbed a flashlight and rushed to the backup control room. His phone buzzed again. This time it was not a call. It was a world emergency alert. Global space agencies confirm incoming object. Estimated impact time, 23 hours. Within minutes, the news spread everywhere. Airports stopped flights. Governments held emergency meetings. The internet exploded with fear. Some people said it was the end of the world. Others believed scientists would stop it. But in the observatory, Alan knew something was wrong. Very wrong. When the backup computer finally started, he pulled the data from the telescope. The meteor appeared again on the screen. But now there was something new. A strange radio signal coming from it. It repeated every 13 seconds. Alan played the sound through the speakers. It wasn't normal space noise. It sounded like 3 low pulses, then silence, then 3 pulses again. He recorded the pattern. It looked almost like a code. Alan whispered slowly. This is impossible. Meteorites don't send signals. But this one clearly was. At that moment, another scientist appeared on his screen through a secure video link. It was Dr. Maya Chen, an astrophysicist from Tokyo. Her face looked pale. "Alan, tell me you see the signal too." "I do," he said. Maya nodded slowly. "Every telescope on Earth sees it." Alan leaned forward. "Have you decoded it yet?" Maya hesitated. "Yes." Alan felt a cold chill. "What does it say?" Maya didn't answer immediately. Instead, she shared her screen. Numbers appeared. Then letters. Then finally a message. Only 2 words. Alan read them aloud. "Stay silent." Both scientists sat quietly. Neither of them spoke. Outside, people were starting to panic. Cars filled the roads. Stores were crowded. Some people prayed. Others recorded videos, thinking it might be the last day on Earth. But high above the planet, the object continued falling. And the signal continued repeating. "Stay silent." 13 seconds. Again. "Stay silent." Then something even worse happened. Space agencies around the world launched a probe satellite toward the object to scan it. The satellite sent back one single image. When Alan saw it, he felt sick. The meteor wasn't a rock. It was perfectly smooth, almost like metal. And on its surface were giant shapes, lines, patterns, almost like doors. Then the satellite camera suddenly filled with static. The signal died. And at the exact same moment, the mysterious message changed. The signal now said something new. "You were not supposed to see US." Alan's hands slowly dropped from the keyboard. "This isn't a disaster," he whispered. "This is an arrival." And far above Earth, something inside the meteor started opening. The message from space kept repeating. "You were not supposed to see US." Every 13 seconds. Around the world, scientists listened in silence. No one spoke. No one knew what to do. Inside the Red Mesa Observatory, Dr. Alan Reeves and Dr. Maya Chen stayed connected through the secure line. Alan looked exhausted. "How can something inside a meteor send messages?" he asked quietly. Maya shook her head. "I don't think it's a meteor anymore." Before Alan could respond, the power flickered again. Then suddenly, everything went dark. Not just the observatory. Across the entire town of Red Mesa, every light went out. Cars stopped. Phones shut down. Even the stars seemed dimmer. Alan looked out the window. The whole town was covered in darkness. Then his emergency radio suddenly came alive with voices from around the world. London reporting full blackout. Tokyo power grid down. New York losing electricity across Manhattan. Within minutes, scientists confirmed something impossible. Half of Earth had lost power at the same time. Satellites were failing. Airplanes were forced to land. Military systems started shutting down. Alan whispered slowly. "It's controlling our technology." Maya nodded. "Yes." Then she showed him something terrifying. A new satellite image. The object in space had changed shape. The giant meteor was no longer whole. It had split into 5 massive pieces. Each piece was moving toward a different part of Earth. Alan's heart started racing. Impact points. Maya zoomed the map. Red circles appeared. Pacific Ocean, Siberia, South America, Africa, and the last one. Alan stared at the final location. It was heading toward the Middle East desert, very close to Red Mesa's region. Alan whispered, "No, no, no." But that wasn't the worst news. The objects weren't falling like meteors anymore. They were slowing down, almost like they were landing. Suddenly, the emergency radio screamed with a new report. A shaky voice spoke. "This is the International Space Station. We have visual contact." Static filled the channel. Then the astronaut spoke again. His voice sounded terrified. "They're not rocks." Alan leaned closer to the speaker. "What are they?" Maya asked. For several seconds, the astronaut said nothing. Then he whispered one final sentence. "They look like machines." The transmission cut. Silence returned. On Earth, people were now running through the streets in fear. Without electricity, cities looked like giant dark shadows. Sirens echoed everywhere. And above the planet, 5 enormous objects slowly descended through the clouds. Alan walked outside the observatory. The sky was glowing red again. Then something huge moved behind the clouds. Not falling, hovering. A deep vibration filled the air. The ground trembled. Alan felt the sound inside his chest. Then he saw it. A massive dark shape slowly sliding across the sky. It was silent. Too silent. Almost like the sky itself was moving. Alan whispered in fear. "They're already here." And suddenly, every radio in the world turned on at the same time. A single voice spoke. Cold. Calm. Not human. You were told to stay silent. The strange voice echoed across the world. You were told to stay silent. Then every radio suddenly shut off again. Silence returned. A heavy, uncomfortable silence. In the town of Red Mesa, people stood frozen in the streets. No cars moved. No one spoke. The sky above them was glowing red like a dying fire. Dr. Alan Reeves slowly stepped away from the observatory building. His heart was beating fast. Above him, the massive shape in the clouds moved again. It was enormous, bigger than a stadium. Slowly, the clouds parted, and the object appeared. It was not a rock. It looked like a giant black structure, smooth and curved like metal. Strange glowing lines moved across its surface like veins of light. It floated silently in the sky. No engines, no fire, just hovering. Alan whispered to himself, "This can't be real." Suddenly the ground shook violently. People screamed. Far away in the desert, a massive column of dust exploded into the air. One of the objects had landed. The impact sound rolled across the desert like a giant drum. Alan grabbed his binoculars and looked toward the horizon. A dark shape now sat in the desert sand. It was enormous, almost like a tower lying on its side. But something was happening around it. The surface of the object began to open. Panels slowly moved apart. A deep grinding sound echoed across the desert. Inside the opening, there was only darkness. For a long moment, nothing came out. Then someone in town shouted, "Look!" Alan raised the binoculars again. Something was moving near the object. Small shapes, dozens of them, walking. But their movement looked wrong. Too smooth. Too quiet. They stepped out of the darkness one by one. Tall figures. Thin. Their bodies looked almost human, but their arms were too long. Their heads were slightly tilted, and their skin reflected the red light of the sky like black glass. Alan felt a wave of fear run through his body. "What are they doing?" someone whispered nearby. At first, nothing. The creatures simply stood there in the desert, perfectly still. Then they began walking, slowly, toward the town. No running, no sound, just silent walking. Meanwhile, around the world, the other objects had also landed. In Africa, in Siberia, in the Pacific Ocean, in South America. Everywhere, the same figures stepped out. Within 1 hour, something terrifying started happening. People began disappearing. Not in groups, just one person at a time. A man walking down a street in London vanished. A woman inside her apartment in Brazil disappeared. A child sleeping in Tokyo was suddenly gone. No screams, no struggle, just gone. Security cameras only showed a quick flicker of static. Then empty space. Back in Red Mesa, the tall figures were now entering the town. They moved slowly through the streets, looking at everything. Cars, buildings, people. But they didn't attack anyone. They simply watched. And every time someone spoke loudly or screamed, that person vanished seconds later. Alan slowly realized something horrifying. The message from space was not a warning. It was a rule. He whispered quietly to the people around him. "Don't talk." Everyone looked at him. "Why?" someone asked softly. Alan pointed toward the creatures walking down the road. "They hear us." Right at that moment, a man across the street started yelling in panic. "This is crazy! What are those things?" The words had barely left his mouth when he suddenly disappeared. Gone. Like he had never existed. The street fell into total silence. Alan's voice trembled. "That's why they said, stay silent." Above the town, the giant ship in the sky slowly began to move again. And somewhere inside it, something far bigger was waking up. The town of Red Mesa had become a place of whispers. No one dared to speak loudly. People moved slowly through the streets, communicating with hand signs or writing on paper. Every person had seen what happened when someone made noise. They disappeared. Dr. Alan Reeves hid inside the observatory with a small group of survivors. A candle burned on the table because electricity was still gone. On a small battery laptop, Alan studied the strange signal from the... No one dared to speak loudly. People moved slowly through the streets, communicating with hand signs or writing on paper. Every person had seen what happened when someone made noise. They disappeared. Dr. Alan Reeves hid inside the observatory with a small group of survivors. A candle burned on the table because electricity was still gone. On a small battery laptop, Alan studied the strange signal from the alien objects. The message "Stay silent" was still repeating. But now Alan noticed something new. There was another hidden signal inside the transmission. A second pattern. Very faint. He quickly showed it to Dr. Maya Chen, who was still connected through a weak satellite link. Maya stared at the data for a long time. Then her eyes widened. "Oh no!" Alan typed quickly on the keyboard. "What is it?" Maya looked terrified. "It's not a warning message." Alan felt cold. "Then what is it?" Maya whispered. "It's an instruction." Alan frowned. Instruction for what? Maya slowly translated the signal pattern. The computer converted the symbols into simple words. When the final line appeared, both scientists froze. The translation read, "Silence preserves the subject." Alan leaned back in shock. Subject. Maya continued decoding. More lines appeared. Sound triggers removal. Collect viable specimens. Alan whispered slowly, "They're studying us." Maya nodded. Yes. The creatures walking through cities were not soldiers. They were collectors. Anyone who made loud noise was removed. Anyone who stayed quiet was observed. It was like humans had become animals inside a giant experiment. Suddenly, Alan's laptop camera turned on by itself. The screen flickered. Then an image appeared. One of the tall black creatures. It stood inside a dark room somewhere. Behind it were hundreds of humans standing silently. Alive. Watching. Alan realized something terrible. They're not killing people. They're taking them. Just then the ground outside the observatory started shaking again. The massive object hovering above Red Mesa was descending. Through the window, Alan could see it clearly now. The ship was lowering toward the desert. A giant opening slowly formed at the bottom. Bright white light poured out. The tall creatures in the town suddenly stopped moving. All of them. At the same moment. Then they slowly turned toward the observatory. Alan felt his heart pounding. Why are they coming here? Maya whispered through the speaker. Alan, I think they know you're studying them. Outside, dozens of the creatures began walking toward the building. Their movements were slow, controlled, silent. Inside the observatory, the survivors looked at Alan with fear. One woman started crying softly. Alan raised his finger to his lips. Quiet. Outside the door, the shadows of the creatures grew longer. One of them reached the entrance. Its long arm touched the door. For a moment, everything was silent. Then suddenly, a deep voice came from the sky above the town. Louder than anything heard before. Final collection phase. The ship above Red Mesa began pulling people upward into the sky with beams of light. Entire groups lifted off the ground silently. Alan stared in horror. Maya, they're taking everyone. Maya's voice trembled. Alan, the timer. Alan looked back at his screen. The countdown he had seen at the beginning was still running. Now it showed 59 minutes and 12 seconds. Less than 1 hour remained. But the message on the screen had changed again. 3 final words appeared. Earth evaluation complete. That's part 5. Only part 6, the final part, remains. In the last part you will see what happens when the 24-hour timer reaches 0. The shocking true reason Earth was visited. Whether humanity survives or disappears. If you're ready for the ending, tell me. Write final part. Next part warting. Alright, this is the final part of the story. The last hour of Earth begins now. 24 hours the falling silence part 6, the decision. The countdown on Dr. Alan Reeves' screen continued moving. 58 minutes and 41 seconds. Less than 1 hour remained. Outside the observatory, the sky looked terrifying. The giant black ship hovered only a few hundred meters above the desert now. A bright white light poured from the bottom of the craft. People across Red Mesa were slowly being lifted into the sky. No sound. No screams. Just silent bodies rising into the air. Inside the observatory, Alan and the small group of survivors watched through the window in fear. The tall black creatures had surrounded the building. They were standing completely still. Watching. Studying. Alan's laptop suddenly flickered again. The strange alien signal was becoming stronger. New symbols appeared across the screen. Evaluation data. Species. Human. Population sample. Collected. Behavior. Chaotic/emotional/loud. Alan whispered quietly. They're judging us. Across the weak connection, Dr. Maya Chen was still online. Her voice sounded tired and scared. Alan, we are part of some kind of test. Alan stared at the screen. Test for what? Before Maya could answer, another line appeared. Planetary status: suitable. Dominant species: unstable. Alan felt his stomach drop. They're deciding if we deserve the planet. Outside, one of the tall creatures slowly stepped closer to the observatory door. Its dark glass-like face reflected the candlelight from inside. For a moment, it simply stared. Then Alan noticed something strange. The creature was holding something. A small floating device. It began scanning the building. The laptop screen translated the signal again. Final observation phase. Human reaction: fear/silence/survival. Maya suddenly spoke again. Alan, listen carefully. Yes. Humans only survived because we stayed quiet. Alan nodded slowly. Yes. Maya continued. That means the creatures learned something. Alan's eyes widened. They learned we can adapt. Outside, the creature finished scanning the building. The other creatures slowly began walking away. One by one. Back toward the desert. Alan watched in disbelief. They're leaving. The sky above Red Mesa suddenly became brighter. The massive ship began rising again. Higher. Higher. All across Earth, the other ships were doing the same. Then the alien signal sent its final message. The laptop translated it slowly. Evaluation complete. Human species: primitive but adaptive. Planet ownership: retained. Observation cycle: 500 years. Alan whispered the words as he read them. They're coming back. The ships suddenly shot upward into space at impossible speed. Within seconds, they disappeared into the darkness. The red color slowly faded from the sky. Power across the world began returning. Lights flickered back on in cities. Phones started working again. People who had been taken by the beams of light slowly returned to the ground. Alive. Confused. But something had changed. Every human on Earth remembered the same thing. The message: stay silent. Weeks later, the world tried to return to normal. Governments called it the 24-hour event. Scientists searched space for the ships again. But they were gone. Completely gone. Dr. Alan Reeves sat alone in the observatory one night, staring at the stars. Everything looked peaceful again. But then his computer suddenly made a soft beeping sound. A new signal appeared. Very faint. Very far away. Alan slowly leaned closer to the screen. The message repeated once. Only 4 words. Observation will continue. Alan looked up at the silent night sky. And for the first time in human history, humanity understood something terrifying. We were never alone. And we were still being watched.